What's going on, my freaks and geeks? This is the Square Roundtable podcast. I want to thank you guys so much for coming out and chilling with us tonight and letting us converse a little bit, guys. Yeah, y'all, tonight we have a very special guest. Please welcome director, writer, and creator of the amazing space exploration comic book Redshift, Mr. H.S. Top.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, man.
What's up? Hey, it is great to have you. Just like we talked a little bit before, I definitely love the HS, man. So that's why I went with the HS. It's pretty
want to make it
HS Top. We just got to come up with something for what the other S is going to stand for. But yeah, man, we are so happy once again to have you. And like I said, we've been conversing back and forth online a little bit before we got you on the podcast. And like I said, thanks to the guys over at Soda and Telepath. Thanks to Anthony for, putting us together. We really appreciate all of it. But like I asked all my other guests, like right before we get started and dive into everything, because we certainly want to talk about your awesome comic book, Redshift, which I really enjoyed. And I got a chance to talk about it with my co-host. Everybody really enjoyed it, man. But we'll hop into that a little bit later. I wanted to know about you because it's just been a crazy year, man. I want to just check on the, mental health, see how you've been dealing with the craziness of the pandemic and COVID. How are you holding up?
I'm doing good, man. I think it's a tough year for everyone, and you just got to adapt because life is crazy. It throws crazy stuff at you, and you just got to find ways to get through it and keep healthy however you can keep healthy. I've been good, man. I've been blessed. I got my family, 2 kids. So I honestly don't have time to worry too much. I got to worry about them. You know what I'm saying?
Makes sense. No,
yeah. And they're little too. So I can't worry too much. I just got to roll with whatever's happening and go with it.
Definitely. Yeah, man, we appreciate all that good stuff. And I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad your family's okay. And the great part is I think it's awesome that even through all of this, you were able to create art. That's always a positive thing. Yeah, we really appreciate that. And we can relate because like I tell everybody on the podcast, everybody that we have on here, that we started the podcast literally during the pandemic. So it's great to have something that could take your mind off of whatever's going on and just have something to keep that creative part of you going, because dealing with all this stuff out here, it can get like really daunting.
Would you guys have, sometimes I just think of the good things that happen. Like I wouldn't have never spent this much time with family and my kids because I was working, they're going to school. Would you guys have started this podcast if there was no pandemic? So you can sometimes pull out good things out of bad situations. And I feel like if you can do that, then you're, in a sense, you're doing well.
Yeah, find the silver lining in everything.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And I agree because, and yes, to answer your question, it's hard to put stuff like that into words. We had this idea for a long time, man, and truly enough, it probably wouldn't have been the case, like you said, because everybody's so busy and you just got, you run around trying to do this and that. So certainly this has been a crazy pandemic and there's been a lot of confusion going on. But certainly, personally, I know I'm the closest that I've been in a while with my family. I'm the closest I've been to my guys, Marcus and Dmitri, because we would go a while without talking, especially Dmitri because he lives on the other side of the world.
Other side of the world, yeah.
So
sad part is I live right down the street from them.
literally 10 minutes away.
In the beginning of COVID, right down the street is you're getting ready for war to go outside. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, you write about a lot of science fiction and all this, and it's crazy that I was actually talking to my mom the other day, and I'm like, this is sick, man. It seems like a science fiction plot. This is ridiculous. Yeah. I never thought that I would get used to wearing a mask and walking outside and have that be part of my just daily outfit. I'd be scared to breathe in outside air. I never thought that was going to be a thing. You couldn't tell me that. I'd be like, oh wow, that's the new HS Talk book that that word. So, you know, like, so I didn't think it would be real. This is unfortunately our reality, but the thing that we like to talk about on this podcast is just like how a lot of people have been dealing with this reality, and how a lot of people, including yourself, have turned such a terrible situation into something that could be positive. Before we even get started, we appreciate that. Certainly reading your story, it definitely did bring me a lot of joy. I really liked it.
Yes, definitely did.
Because we love science. I know I love
science fiction.
I like space, so anything space you throw at me, I'm just a happy little kid.
No, these guys, Demetrius and Marcus, they're like the biggest, like anything. We talk about Star Wars all the time, man. That's them all day long.
Let me ask you something though. You mean the old Star Wars or the new Star Wars? Except for Mandalorian, man. That thing is.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, Mandalorian is was one of the best things that come out of Star Wars. And have you seen the new animated show, the Bad Batch?
No, I heard it was good though, right?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
You should check it out if you haven't.
Yeah, I'm going to.
See, that's good. You're like me and my brother. Like you can't talk about us now. We have a guest that hasn't seen it yet, so that's good.
Hey, he hasn't seen the Batch, but he's seen Star Wars. So
yeah, me and Chad.
Hold on, you haven't seen The Mandalorian yet?
Not all of it. Oh no.
Man.
Right?
Yeah,
why are you reading my book, man? You should be watching Mandalorian, man.
See, this always happens. I always get talked about by the guests for not watching something dealing with Star Wars. Look, I'm gonna do it. Okay, we here. I'm gonna get it done. That's my assignment. We talked about that on the last podcast. Me and my brother are going to get better with Star Wars. We got you.
Or else.
Or look, they threatened to fire me over this.
Right, we're both going to get booted. This is going to be Marcus and Dmitri.
I'm about to hit leave.
See, that is just awful, man. Look, we're going to get better. Like I promise. But but on a serious note, I want to know like more so about you, because I know you have a background in film and you went to school for screenwriting. If I'm
I went to NYU film
nice.
School. Yeah,
nice. That's big time. So definitely with that, how did that like education and that training? How did that help you with world building and narrative creating when it comes to your comics? So, in what way did that help?
In comics, it didn't help as much because comics are a very different animal than writing screenplays, and you're using a different muscle in your brain. So they don't correlate as well as people would think. But what I would say correlates between filmmaking and making comics is you got to have that. You can't care what anyone says in terms of this can't be done or this can't be made. You just got to be you got to have that perseverance. That's what because I think like indie filmmaking, which was my background before when I was doing production and making short films and coming out of NYU, it's all about just, especially in New York, it's all about hustling and getting your projects made, scrapping it together with whoever you can do it with. And comics is in that sense, it's like a microcosm of filmmaking. Like you have a team and you need to find money and then you need to put the project together and see it to the end. I think that's the main thing that I took from filmmaking, but the translating it from as a story, they're so different, man. I know they storyboard films, so I guess in that sense, maybe there's a similarity, but they're both visual mediums, but one is very heavy on writing, but you can't use like sound and you can't use some of the other things like special effects that you can in filmmaking to tell a story.
Okay. Well, seeing that, and that's really interesting because that actually brings me to my next question. Seeing that screenplay writing, which is your background, and comic book writing are two different animals. I want to know what interests you about that medium. Like what made you want to make that transition into comic books?
Just to be blunt, because no one was reading my screenplays, man. So I had a bunch of screenplays that I wrote. They'd get shopped around Hollywood. People would look at them, but nothing. It's just difficult to break in as a writer, as a new writer, unknown. No one knows who you are. So I was just like, there's got to be a better way to tell this story. I wanted to get the story out. So I don't want to just sit on screenplays.
For sure.
So I was like, what's the better, there's got to be another alternative. And I just went back to my childhood days when I would read comics, and I was like, why don't I just do that? Because you're still telling a story and you're telling it visually. And then I did that process where I would take a screenplay and make it into a comic, and it's difficult. It just doesn't, you have a lot more dialogue in a film. In a comic, you got to be, it helped. I think if Hollywood was smart, they would take these comic book writers and make them screenwriters, because they're already good at being efficient. You know what I mean? And that's what I learned. It made me a better writer. It made me a better screenwriter to write comic books for sure than I was before.
Man, that's actually a great point. You've seen some of our podcasts, but we literally talk about that all of the time, because you have character writing and stories that are really well put together in comic books, but it's just weird how it doesn't translate when you take that source material and make it into cinematic form. And you have so many examples. You got countless Batman movies, Watchmen, Justice League. These stories, it's like it's crazy to me. So I really like the point that you made about that.
I think Hollywood is stuck in certain things, like the way they do things. But if they had just taken the comic book writer and asked them to put this into a screen, how do we tell this for film? And have that discussion with them and maybe given them that job, you would have probably seen a different film, and probably a much better film.
Yes.
At least that's what I think. That's at least from my experience and from what I know, what I've learned from comic book writing and what I've learned from screenplay writing. I think it just, the one benefits the other more than vice versa.
We totally agree.
I think like they should at least have the comic book writers, like of those people that have written them for years. Like, okay, how does Batman do these things? How does Superman do these things? What are their values that they have? Like, how can we portray that in live action? Because they haven't been able to get those characters right for years, decades. Like
at all.
Why is Batman making me laugh? Like that's like he shouldn't be making me laugh, man. He should be brooding on a rooftop. What are we doing here?
I think a lot of it is because they hype up the movie. They hype up the movie based on the people that want their character to be portrayed live action, and they go through all these like theatrics with the actors that they have, and not really focusing too much on the source material, but rather just like the aspect of basically, how can I put it? Like, I guess they try to get the more publicity based on like the actors that they use. It's like the situations.
So
if that makes sense.
So that's how they can finance their film, is directly the finance comes from who's acting as Batman and who's acting as Superman and who's acting as Wonder Woman. Right. That's exactly how so story is secondary to that. It's not about it's not about what story it is, it's who's playing this character. Then story takes a sidestep, and then it gets further diluted as production moves on.
Yeah, it's like more of like, how are we going to get them into the theater? Like, with what people can we have to play them, rather than like how the story is. Once they got you paid, your ticket, your money, whatever, the story does. They already got you. The story could be whatever at that point in time. So it's like, how are we going to make money off of these things?
In the end, it's mostly up to the studio, and that's how a lot of times you get these movies where directors will leave the film, or they clash heads with the writers or the studio heads, because the studio might say, I understand you're trying to adapt the Dark Knight comic book, but we want it like this because we want to sell toys or we want to sell t-shirts or something. And then they'll leave. So it's always been like that in Hollywood. You know that from studying film, the history of film. The studios have always had a big part in what happens with a movie as far as like actors. And it was even worse back in the day because they literally owned actors. Like you couldn't work for one studio for the rest of your life. So it's always been studios.
Yeah, and another thing, not to cut you off, Chad, but I think another thing that dilutes the story is maybe the company that owns the specific franchise. Like I would say maybe a superhero might have a darker story, and because Disney might own that hero, they change it to get more people like, oh, willing to watch it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the same things. And a lot of what I liked about your book was just like how realistic the characters were. And I liked how, especially with the art, like the art and the writing really like work in tandem with one another to make a great world. That's why I asked you about world building earlier. Yeah. And with that being said, I wanted to know, would you, knowing what you know about the film industry and knowing what you're doing right now in the comic book industry, would you feel comfortable with your story being made into a cinematic type of movie, or would you want it to, like, how would you navigate your story if you had that choice?
This was actually this was a screenplay first, so it already is in that sort of in that medium. But would I like to see it as a film? Yeah, definitely. It's going to be tough to make it into a film because it's a space, the setting and the atmosphere, and it's going to cost money. So I think. Yeah, so that was one of the things that drove me into comics, was like, it's going to be difficult to get a no-name writer to pitch this to Hollywood. So this is probably an easier way to get the word out about what it's like on Mars and what Redshift is all about.
Well, that definitely makes
the story, you know?
No, it is. What's up, Josh?
I was gonna say, so in terms of writing the story or trying to pitch it, it'd be a lot easier if there was visual representation of it.
Yeah, sure. Now let's see what happens. Now it'll be much easier to producers. I don't want to like quote unquote badmouth them, but they don't have time. They don't have the wherewithal to read a full script. So it's easier to throw a comic on their table and be like, hey, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely seems like a viable option. And plus, like, it's short form, right? It's only 30 something pages. There's not like tons and tons of dialogue. So I guess it's easy for somebody like a producer or somebody to take in and right, exactly, and get an accurate representation of what you want your universe to look like. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So as far as more so leaning towards the comic book side of things, because I want to dive more into your story, I want to know, because you're with Scout Comics, so I wanted to know what was the process of working with them and what was the process like the mechanism for getting your book off the ground in general. Walk us through that.
So Scout was just like, I think it's going to be I don't think it'll ever happen like it happened with Scout, because Scout was the one time. So I've been pitching Redshift and nobody wanted it. But luckily, Aftershock, who's run by Mike Martz, and I think it's Jim Pruitt, they really liked it, but they couldn't fit it into their slate. So I think Jim's brother, James Pruitt, worked at Scout, his twin brother. So one brother gave it to his other brother and was like, yo, we can't do this, but maybe you guys can do this. And they loved it. And they reached out to me on Twitter. And at the time I wasn't even I have a Twitter handle, but I'd never used it that much. So it took me like about 6 months to reply back to them saying, yeah, I do still have this book. You still want to do it. And luckily, they wanted to do it. So I was like, all right, let's go.
Okay.
So that was for Scout. My first book with IDW was different. I had issue 1 done. I just went out and got an artist and did a pretty interesting issue 1. And I went around Comic-Cons pitching it. And this is probably, I guess it's difficult from what I hear now. This was probably like 5 years ago doing this. Running around cons, like showing your book to people doesn't generally work. But luckily my letterer, whose name is Janice Chang, she's really well connected. She's one of the great letterers in comic history, I would say. One of the first female letterers. She's worked on a lot of Marvel books like Alpha Flight and old original like Marvel titles. So she knew Chris Ryall at IDW, who was the head of IDW at the time, like the chief creative officer. And she's like, hey, Chris, can you meet this guy? This is during, I think, San Diego Comic-Con. And Chris, like, he's busy. He's running the booth and he's got a ton of things to do. But I think through her saying that, and then I don't know what I did, man. I spit some BS at him like really quickly because I could tell he needs to go. I don't even know what I said, man. I must have just BS'd him about it.
Just freestyled it?
Yeah. And he's, dude, I think he just to shut me up, he's like, my card and just email me later. I got to go. So I was like, all right, cool. But luckily, like, I think through Janice's connection, like, he actually responded. And I think he took a look at the book and then he's like, all right, this looks good. Let's try and work something out. Generally, I hear you It doesn't work like that, but I don't know. I think everyone has their own way to get in, and you can glean a little bit from different creators, like how they got in. And I think the main thing I found is you just got to keep trying. If you stop trying, then it's not going to work. You just got to keep trying. And then so at some point, there's going to be a door that'll open.
Yeah, I think so. I'm a big advocate for just people don't really take it into consideration, like just the power of like willing something into existence, the power of human will, man, and just like staying focused on your goal. That's huge. Because like you said, eventually, you know, that door, it might come from the place where you least expect it. Like you said, this crazy set of events, like you said, this probably wouldn't ever happen again with Scout. It just So no, that's good.
Yeah, I got lucky with that, man.
That's good stuff. And also, was it when you pitched it? Was it already like how it is now with the artists that you have?
No, it was very different. No, it was bad, man. It wasn't a good book. I know why it wasn't getting picked up, because it wasn't what it was now. Scout put me with an editor named Andrea Molinari, who's himself a really good writer. He has a book out called The Shepherd, which is really good. And Scout itself, they're all a bunch of writers. It just, they know how to tell stories, and they understand the process of it. And so it made it easier. So once I got a good editor, I had some editing help too. Like, I think one of the things I would tell other writers right now is to get an editor that's honest with you, and then be open to criticism, man. You can get criticism, right? You got to follow your instinct at the end of the day, but if you're open to criticism, you're always going to get better.
Oh yeah. I learned that in college real quick.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's real.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still learning it now, man. Like it's
a process. One thing I used to hate, I still have like PTSD from it now. And this wasn't in college, because I went to college for biology. But when I was in high school, I was in the magnet art program. And what I used to hate, like we talked about, just people talking about your work. When we had a project, like we'd have to do a huge art project, and every Friday we'd have to stand in front of the class and do that critique, man. And that thing hurt. Terrible. That thing hurt.
I had to drink a little bit before that.
It's worse. It's worse in college, Chad, because not only do you have to critique, you don't get to stand up there. Everybody put up their projects and nail them on the wall. The professor gets up there. She asks everybody in the class what they think. You have to sit there the whole time. You can't say anything. Then after the class speech, she says something, and then they finally ask you. So after you go through all of that, you just be like, "Thank you for all of it. I'll do what I can to change it." But it's you gotta sit there. It's like you being judged by the high council or something.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
But yeah, it just how does one go about getting an editor? Is there a specific place to go find one, like a website or something?
I just would meet people at Comic Cons and try and like network, and you just. You try and network as much as you can, and then if you have a big network, it's like having a big toolbox, and you never know when you can reach in for that tool, and like they can help you with. So I feel like you got to do that and it can be with other writers. You can use another writer to edit your stuff, or like a friend who knows comics or.
Okay. And another thing about your book, like I said, because the writing is so easy to jump into, kind of immerse yourself into the world. Like, it's a straightforward story. The thing I like about it is that we're sucked straight into a situation, and the art itself really melds with the story. I want to know, what was the process for the artist that created the illustrations? Did you get to pick, or was it given to you by Scout, or how did that work?
So he did this book called, you don't see that, from Dark Horse. He did a few of these illustrations in here, a few of the pages, probably a chapter or two in here.
Yeah.
Here's his work. You can see what he does this is a Western, and he's good at doing Westerns. And I think what he did with Redshift, which I liked, and which I always thought it was, is when you're out on Mars, you're a pioneer, you're a pilgrim. All right, because you've gone to a new world, and it is the next frontier, and it's like the West. It's going to be the Wild West of the future. And I feel like he made a Western out in space. He made a Sergio Leone film basically with this book out. And I thought it's amazing. Like, once I saw him, I was like, he'd kill it in space. If he just translated what he did here to this book, then I found him. I think I found him through another artist named Zach Howard, who's a really awesome artist in his own. He's done a bunch of books. He does Hellboy.
Wow.
Yeah, he does. He's done some stuff for DC in the past. He did Wild Blue Yonder, which was a really good indie book with IDW. But he put me in touch with Brent McKee, who's the artist for Redshift, and we didn't really have to think about it much. Brent didn't think about it much. He was just like, "Yeah, let's do it," and we just started working.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that when I was reading it, it felt like a Western to me because I'm a big Western. Yeah, that was like one of my favorites. That was my favorite part to study in college. But when I read it, I was like, you got the pioneer, like you said, the pioneers on the frontier. They got to go do a discovery. And then you got the people in the town. It was like, I got the motifs and the elements. So I like Chad said, I was immersed from the beginning. Yeah. And then with the artwork too, it's funny that you said Dark Horse because when I seen it, I was like, oh, this look like one of the old, like the artists who did this. This look like something from the Star Wars Dark Horse. Like when they used to make those, it looked similar to that art. Yeah. So I thought it was Dark Horse when I was reading it because of the art. And then when you said that, I was like, wow, that's crazy. So yeah, that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. And like to add on to the Western aesthetic, like I really like the page where Helena went out to go work and he was with all the other workers and they were trying to get ice. Like I really liked that. Like I really liked how you tried to build up on the environment. Where like he was talking with the other workers and stuff. That was a really good page.
One of the cool things about Redshift is I wrote it with the help of NASA JPL. So I contacted NASA when I was thinking about it. Yeah, and it took a while, but finally, I think what happened was they gave the idea to a bunch of their scientists. It was hard to find someone to take me seriously at first. I had to like just network my way through it, and then finally like some family friend worked in NASA in I think it was in Alabama. They have like a program there, and then so somehow I got connected to Pasadena JPL, and this scientist Wesley Traub, who's now the head of their exoplanet exploration program. He emailed me and said, look, I like your idea. I'll work with you on it. And let's talk about it. What do you need? And so I had a discourse about what life would be like on Mars. And it was just interesting, man, because as I was writing the book, the science literally would change day to day because there's so much research that was going into Mars at the time and over the last 5 years. One of the examples was they didn't have any water. Like originally, they were mining for metal to build the rocket. Then at some point, I think in the last 3 years, NASA determined that Mars has a lot of water. It's just locked into their north and south polar caps. And it's not technically usable water. You'd have to treat it and go through a process to make it drinkable. But so that just to change the story, because now that's a resource that's at some point it's going to go away. And it's something that once we get out there, we'd have to go work for it. It's not like you can just go to a lake and get water. You need to go dig for it and find it. So that whole scene changed. That was now they're mining for ice veins of water.
Yeah. Well, I can totally dig it. I'm 100% on board for
what's that?
Go ahead. No.
So I think one of the other cool things that I learned when you go to Mars, like the whole point of being on Mars is that you have to, what your goal is to extend life. Because it's very difficult. You can't just walk outside and breathe air, and you don't just have food growing on a bush. You can't just pick a berry off a bush and eat it. So every moment on Mars, you are working towards extending those moments. So every minute you're trying to make into an hour, every hour you're trying to make into a day, every day you're trying to make into a week, and so on. And that's the goal of life on Mars. All right. So if you were to have a colony on Mars, everyone, it's not going to be, it wouldn't be a democracy. It's not going to work like we have it here in the US. It's got to be like a military style authoritarian system, because you can't have people going off doing their own stuff, man. Like it'll end up in death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the freedom, I don't know, I just thought it'd be interesting to see, like we're so free here, even though it seems like we're not. Just if you look at it in terms of Earth versus Mars, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I'm here for it.
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah, scientifically accurate science fiction. I love it. So-
Yeah, I just wanted to ground it a little bit.
And I will say this, it was so realistic. Like he was like, because like when he had to take the oxygen from old dude, I was like, that's like a realistic thing. He had to make that tough
Yeah,
that
decision.
choice.
And I was like, oh man, it got real for a second. I was
No,
not
it got
expecting that.
So there you go. You gotta extend life. That's the first thing you gotta do. The first thing you gotta think about in anything is, how do I extend life? How am I gonna extend life?
Exactly. And I also liked how you made it seem like extending life is extremely difficult to do, because the whole thing with becoming a Voyager, it's not as all what it was cracked up to be, or what Helena thought it was cracked up to be.
Yeah.
And it's like an extremely dangerous occupation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's his conflict, right? He doesn't want to extend life. You got to put your life at risk.
Exactly.
No, I like that. I like the themes of the story, and that's a good lead in, because a lot of the stuff with being a Voyager and just trying to extend life, that it really goes into the theme of like PTSD of Helena had to go through, and like sacrifice. And that was something that I saw time and time again while reading your story. And I wanted to know, like, with these two overarching themes, why was telling this type of story important for you? And also, like, what inspired such strong themes of like sacrifice and PTSD?
It's hard to say, like, how, I don't know. I guess I would say that I've seen it because, so my mom is a lieutenant colonel, or was a lieutenant colonel in the US Army.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And so in summers, I grew up in DC, and I would work at Walter Reed Hospital where she was stationed. So that's like a military hospital, and I would deal with veterans and the VA system, and I'd work in the commissary. And because in summers she'd be like, you can't sit at home, you got to go work. So I would see guys, I work there working with soldiers who've come back, don't have all their facilities and faculties, and either they can't walk or something's wrong, right? They're either suffering through PTSD or some kind of injury or whatever it was. And so I'd see them, and you'd see these guys, sometimes they wouldn't even go for any choice. They just got into the Army because that's all that there was to it. That's what their family did. And I don't think they even had a reason. It's not like they were going to fight for freedom. They were just, that's what their life was. So it just was interesting to me that some people would go do that and risk their well-being for the supposedly greater good. And I wanted to pick that up and try and explore it and understand it for myself.
Wow, I really like that.
Yeah.
I really asked because I can see that even though the story takes place in somewhere that I've never been, the themes are stuff that I can understand. And it seemed real to the writer. It seemed real to you. So yeah, I like that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah. Definitely.
And another part that I liked about the comic was in the beginning where you had Helena and his dad and his brother, and you made it to seem, okay, yeah, he's the main character, but how can we make it seem, how do we make people care about his situation? And basically you have to give them, like, introduce you to the character's family, giving them something that they can lose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because that was the first thing I was like, okay, his mother isn't here. Okay, so we're going to find out more about that when we get into the story. And it isn't really explicitly stated whether she's alive or not. So I'm like, okay, cool. That's something else I can look forward to. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's just a really well put together story. I love the writing and I love the art, and it all works in such a beautiful way, man. I really appreciate it.
The setup was great.
But it is. Oh, and one thing I want to know, me and my brother were actually talking about this. We sort of now we were going to ask you since we talked to you. Exactly how old is the main character?
I would say he's 21.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because to do this journey, you got to be very young. You can't be, all these astronauts are young, like these guys that are training, because you're going away and time will just pass by the time you can go complete your journey. So you can't take a 40, 50-year-old astronaut to do this because they'll be dead by the time they return.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's the other thing is like you have to take young kids to do this. So that comes into play a little bit. Like they're not as experienced in life, and
I think that's like a recurring like motif with most like civilization kind of stories, or like not cults but different groups and stuff. Like they usually get children, like in Star Wars, the Jedi, they get children when they're young, so they don't have an attachment. Or some people, they might get kids to be trained as assassins because you can mold them into something rather than get somebody who's already making their own decisions. Yeah, a lot. And that's so cool. It's so cool to see like you say things like that because I'm a okay writer. I'll be writing little stuff and I use a lot of that with my stories, like the whole thing with like kids and
so just wait. All I can say is wait till issue 2 and 3 come out. Yeah, this is the way of life on Mars has to be very structured, and there's a certain way to make things work, and there's a certain governance that takes. Prime Commander Oris becomes, the central figure for that. How you govern a people out where resources are running out, and you need people to comply. That stuff will come into play. You'll see. I don't want to give too much away.
Look, I see you smiling, so I know it's good. You can't hold the smile back. I know it's awesome.
Yeah,
and that's when you know. That's when you know.
That's when you know it's good. Exactly. But we're loving it, man. We're loving it.
I'm just smiling because I'm on the show, man.
Oh man! Hey, look, happy to have you, man. Hey, like I always tell them, man, I love when we have writers, directors, any film people, because normally I'm singled out. Either it's an anime one, I don't know any anime, or it's a science one. Chad be talking science. So when I get my people who write and love film, I'd be so hyped. So I'm glad to have you on the show, man.
Yeah, glad you're here.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, HS, I have to ask, what does NB mean? Because I saw that all the time in the comic. If you can answer that.
NB is just, we're trying to build a world. So NB is called for Nova Blade. Nova Blade is just a brand that would be out on Mars selling battery packs and those dune blades that they run around the plains of Mars with. So it'd be like a Tesla, basically.
Okay.
And one more thing about just like a little tidbit, I love the nod to Frost. That's pretty.
Oh yeah.
That's one of my favorite poets. So that's pretty.
Yeah,
cool.
me too.
I was like, okay, hey, nice. So I like the little nod. That was cool.
I figure he's out there. He needs some kind of mantra to get him through. Everyone, all those, like Michael Jordan had his mantra to get him through the game, to get him through that fourth quarter. All those people with a lot on their shoulders, they have something that they do that can get them through. So I feel like I had to give that just some character quirk for Helena to have.
No, and that's cool because I like the fact that one thing that I really like about stories is like when themes come full circle. And that little closing like anecdote was like a way to bring it right back around to something he remembered from his mom. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
but that's definitely awesome, man. And we can't wait to see what's coming up with your next couple of issues. Like definitely, as you could tell, we're all excited about it. So
yeah, man.
I know we're about to be dropping some heat. So I can't wait to see it.
I just hope I can keep up with Brent's art, man, to be honest.
Oh man,
I should just give him a blank book and let you guys look at the art. That's it.
Man, no, he's definitely amazing. Like huge shout out. All you guys, you're doing great work, and we've certainly appreciated hearing your story about how just persistence and just really going after what you want, at the end of the day, it works out. If you just keep going and trying to make your dream work out for you, like that's such a great message, honestly.
Yeah.
And we wanted to know, like, as the last thing, what would you, especially to guys like Marcus and me, because we're all cinephiles, we all love comic books, we're all like up and coming writers and just trying to cut our teeth, like what you were telling us. So what kind of advice would you give to other writers out there trying to make it, whether it's in the comic industry or film?
I think before we recorded, we were talking about writing. Who was saying I was rewriting?
Oh,
Josh.
Josh. Yeah,
Josh. Okay, so I think that's it. That's anyone's a writer. You just, as long as you start rewriting it, you're a writer, because that's what I do, and that's what all the writers I know do. That's basically what it comes down to, is you take something and you write it and you keep writing it until it works. I don't see any other way to it, man.
And
That would be my best advice, is just to keep writing. And then don't give up on the idea. Just keep writing it, rewriting it until it starts to work. Now you can help yourself like with outlining or getting notes and stuff like that, but it comes down to just, can you sit down and keep writing?
Okay.
At least for me.
Yeah, I think
that's some good advice.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because literally that's what I've done with a lot of my stuff. I done rewritten so many things. Like one of the stories me and the guys be talking about now, it went literally from one story to now it's a whole different. It's still like the same like character and idea, but like the storyline has changed so many times. And like you said, you just got to keep rewriting it. Keep going back, looking at stuff, pulling. And another thing I do too is I watch a lot of film. That's always what helped me write good. Because as much as you can watch, the more your ideas are like fresh. So
I think they asked Martin Scorsese like what inspires him, and he said just watching other movies.
Yep, that's exactly
watching other filmmakers and other artists, and that's what inspires him. And I feel like that's probably all of us. Like you get inspired by movies. I can watch a movie and then I can write all night, man.
Yes.
And then like sometimes you need that boost. It's like that you need that kick.
No, definitely. That's serious. And for guys like us and other just up and coming artists really trying to put their work out, people like you really inspire us. Definitely. Thank you for that.
No, it's a cycle, man. I get the same inspiration from you guys.
Man,
we
greatly appreciate that. Exactly.
100%, man. It has really been a pleasure having you once again. We thank you so much for coming out. And we are definitely, whatever you have to promote your book, let us get it so we can push it out for you.
Thank you for putting out the first issue, and that was a great book. Like, man.
Like, hey, you don't know how important that is. Huh? No, I was saying you don't know how important that is for him to say that, because if you got him smiling saying he likes a that's big, because he's real hard to please.
Yeah,
good, man.
He is.
Are you guys going to any cons this year?
I'm gonna try.
We here in Atlanta, we haven't really heard anything, because this month we would have had MomoCon.
Okay.
And we didn't hear anything, so I don't know if in September they're gonna do Dragon Con or they're bringing it back. In Atlanta with the cons and stuff, it's slow, but I know they start having like concerts and the sports stuff.
Yeah,
it's starting to get back, but I still haven't heard much about cons, so we're still looking out for that.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna try, man. I'll try and go to wherever I can get to, but I'm probably New York, because some of my buddies are going to be there, and maybe Denver Comic Con. And I've always wanted to go to. The reason I was asking is because I've always wanted to go to Dragon Con. I heard it was really fun.
It's the best. Like that parade. It's Well,
so
the go ahead. What were you about to say?
So I was saying, if it's on and you guys are going, let me know. I'll come down there and meet you guys.
Hey, nice. That sounds good. We will definitely. Yeah, we will definitely be in contact.
You guys are gonna have to show me ATL.
I know, right?
That's
Southern hospitality, man. We got you.
Of course, man. We're gonna have to take you down to the varsity, man.
I was just about to say that. Just about to say about the varsity.
We'll skip con. We'll just go see it.
Man, you already know, man. It's all good. You are definitely family at this point, so we got you. We got you. And thanks again for the video. We'll definitely use that for the podcast. Like, appreciate
awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah, the link was good. I was able to open it, and we got that. But yeah, Ben, before we head out, I want to ask you, like, what definitely, what do you have for our viewers and listeners out there? Let them know where they can find you. Let them know where they can pick up Redshift. Let them know where they can pick up some of your other titles, just like anything.
So you should be able to buy it at your local comic book store. Just ask them if they don't have it. It's in the Diamond catalog. It'll also be in Lunar, the one that DC is going through. So just ask them for it. Otherwise, you can get it, I think, also from scoutcomics.com. But that won't be, I think that'll be a limited. I don't know how many they're going to have there. You can get it there. Otherwise, come find me, man. I'll get you a copy somehow. I'm on Instagram mostly. I'm on Twitter too. That's the same handle. It's HSTRONIC, which is just HStronic. So just come find me, man. If you can't get it, I'll get it for you.
All right. That sounds like some really good stuff, man. And we will definitely, for all of our viewers and listeners, no worries, guys. We'll put all of the information in the description below. And yeah, y'all, just every week, we are the Square Roundtable Podcast. You can catch us every Friday on MajorZoneMusic.com at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Central time, and 1 p.m. Eastern time. Go ahead, Dmitri.
You can catch us on YouTube at any time on Friday. And if you like the video, smack that like button. Leave us a nice comment about anything we have said in this video, whether you've already viewed this book or whatever. Hit the notification bell so you can get so you can know when we put our videos up every week and our future videos whenever they drop. And yeah, oh yes, follow us on Instagram. We need people there, and follow us on Twitter. I always speak about the Facebook group. Sounds like a broken record this time, but join us on that Facebook group. And yeah,
please talk to us. Please.
All right, guys, just like our guest today with our Facebook group, our ever dying Facebook group, we're gonna just use the power of human will and sacrifice and to get you guys to join our Facebook group. So please
think of it as the new frontier, man. You know,
right? Join the Facebook group. But all of that good stuff, man. But on the serious note, guys, we had such a good time tonight, and I would love everybody, including our wonderful guests for the evening, to introduce themselves one more time before we head out. And I'm your host, Chad Singleton.
Dmitri.
I'm Josh Singleton.
I'm Marcus.
I'm Himkar S-Tac.
All right, and this has been the Square Roundtable. We are out, guys. Peace.